ego clamavi, goniam exaudis time Deus, inclina aurem tuam, et exaudi verba mea, custodi me Domine, ut pupillam oculi sombranarum tuarum protegemi. Exaudi Domine justitia mea, intende deprecatione mea. Gloria Patri et Filium et Spiritui Sancto, sic ut erat in principio et nunc et semper, et in saecula saeculorum. Amen. Ego clamavi, quoniam exaudis time Deus, inclina aurem tuam, et exaudi verba mea, custodi me Domine, ut pupillam oculi sombranarum tuarum protegemi. Lauda anima mea Dominum, laudamus Dominum in vita mea. Psalm Deo quam Dio ero, Alleluia. A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Luke. Glory to you, Lord. A man in the crowd said to Jesus, Master, tell my brother to give me a share of our inheritance. My friend, he replied, who appointed me your judge or the arbitrator of your claims? Then he said to them, watch and be on your guard against avarice of any kind. For a man's life is not made secure by what he owns, even when he has more than he needs. Then he told them a parable. There was once a rich man who, having a good harvest from his land, thought to himself, what am I to do? I have not enough room to store my crops. Then he said, this is what I shall do. I will pull down my barns and build bigger ones, and store all my grain and my goods in them. And I will say to my soul, my soul, you have plenty of good things laid by for many years to come. Take things easy, eat, drink, have a good time. But God said to him, fool, this very night the demand will be made for your soul. And this hoard of yours, whose will it be then? So it is when a man stores up treasure for himself in place of making himself rich in the sight of God. The Gospel of the Lord. Praise to you, Lord Jesus Christ. This Gospel takes me back to one Saturday evening in Sejano, where I was celebrating Mass in the little parish church. And to get the good Italian people's attention, I used a balloon and put on it a face and made it grow bigger and bigger and bigger until eventually it got so big that it needed just but a little prick to make it all disappear in one big bang of empty void. And so it is with the soul. We are full of ourselves. We are indeed full of much hot air, our own importance, and that importance is of course linked with what we own. All a great illusion. We own only one thing, and that is our soul. And we are in danger of owning everything except our soul by trying to own too much. This morning I happened to look again at something I had forgotten about. It was something I had written after being moved by the testimony of a dentist in Colombia who had been fulminated by lightning and had died. She was a Catholic, but even though she was apparently practicing, she was actually not exactly doing the will of God. And we see from what happened to her in the beyond that she was not passing the test. Indeed, all the commandments were being placed before her eyes, and she was being given to understand how each one was being disobeyed. And why? The result was that she was going the wrong way, and she was starting to complain, there must be some mistake, I am a Catholic. She was given to understand what the nature of being a Catholic really is. She was, for our own good, given a second chance, and her soul came back to her body, and her body was miraculously healed. She is now going around giving her testimony, and that testimony is available on the internet, Gloria Polo. And I played on the word Gloria in the title of a sonnet, if I remember rightly, at that time. And it is something which is linked with this gospel, for glory is not of hot air. Hence it is that the big wigs those who are in the limelight, those who are full of importance here, are perhaps not exactly in the same league there. Whereas I see many humble travelling people coming here, often young actually, in their own simple way, being very faithful, having very little in this world, but hanging on to one thing, their soul, for they still believe in the beyond. Indeed, we had an interesting case recently where RTE, the Irish television, was making some film and was doing some footage in a graveyard, and there was a travelling woman in the graveyard busying herself with the good tomb that they had built for the ancestors or whoever was there, and she was being disturbed, and let it be understood. And indeed, she was not being left in peace, and the result was that she went about her business in a very itinerant way and launched a curse on RTE. And RTE, for once, copped on that this was business and had to ask eventually her to lift it off, which is very interesting in this channel of anti-Catholic communication. Sometimes things come to the fore. It happened also in another sphere, that of sport. It is known that some years ago in County Mayo, in the extreme west, there was a funeral passing by, and it was a good, simple person, a widow who was mourning her husband, and this bus came trundling by in a hurry to get to the match and was somewhat cheesed off by this delay. And nevertheless, although they had a Catholic instinct, they thought it is more important to get to the match in time, and so they went by and disturbed considerably the funeral cortege. And the widow, it seems, launched a curse on this team. And it was in this vein: may you never ever win the All-Ireland until the last of your players is deceased. And to this day they have come very close more than once to winning the All-Ireland in Gaelic football, but they have not been able to win the cup. It appears that there are still two alive in the team. Now this is interesting because it's something which comes to the fore even in public, in a land where the media are fairly keen on getting at the church. But the bottom line is the same. When it comes to the crunch, there are certain forces that even the bigwigs can't avoid. Interesting. Even the police recently now in the north have had to make a public apology for not allowing a priest to come to anoint a young person who was dying at the age of 18 after an accident. Interesting. Faith and morals can't quite so quickly be obliterated from the public sphere as people sometimes think. People have a tendency to die, and therefore have to face the issue, and those behind them too have to face the issue, and God is not so quickly mocked when it comes to certain crunches. I was thinking how, in simple terms, that lady, those travelling people, these good humble people of yore, were closer to reality than many of our bigwigs. Here we have a little book called Age of Faith, and in it we have the day-to-day activities of the people of yore. how time was besprinkled with simple things. The months had their seasons, the seasons had their months, and days had their rhythm, and weeks had their schedule. And here we have people from day to day, season to season, going into the beyond, nevertheless calmly and in order, having done what they had to do in the day when it was there, and not so much illusion about what they had not within their power, for they were dependent, and things did not come out of the fridge, but from sweat and labour in the field. And they ended up then in the grave, where at peace they could rest, and people could mourn them also in a certain serenity of soul. Not far from where we live in Wales, we have this island, the holy island of Bardsey, and its entry, where it is said that 20,000 saints are buried, a place of pilgrimage ever since. And the notion of extreme ends is there, because these places at the far west of the civilized world were somehow the place of the setting sun, and even before Christian times were somehow held sacred by the Druids. They were then Christianized, but it is interesting that when one goes to a place like this, there is no difference between yesterday and today, for silence without traffic, without television, without heat, or anything to make one in any way hyped up, is the same as it was in yesteryear. And man is just what he was, nothing greater, just here for a time and gone tomorrow, dependent on forces greater than he. So in that sense, those short innings that they would have had, often in those days, short lives, were well lived, and people knew what life was about. Near here we have the ruins of a later stage of evolution in the monastic life, Mellifont, Old Mellifont, the first monastery founded by the Cistercians in Ireland, founded from Clairvaux, where St. Bernard was sending these colonies out. And here we have part of that ruin. We see the work of their hands, that work which was done precisely in an atmosphere of unhurried peace and interiority, for the Cistercian life lends itself very much to interiority. The work of the hands liberates the mind. Now monks are often engaged in high-powered work on the cybersphere, which actually absorbs the mind. It is self-defeating if one isn't careful. So, to get back to the gospel, that will apply also to many of us if we're not careful. We can be saying to ourselves, "My soul, you have plenty of good things laid by for many years to come." And then this night they will ask your soul of you, "Fool, this very night the demand will be made for your soul, and this hoard of yours, whose will it be then?" Meditabur in mandatis tuis, quid ilexi valde et levabo manus meas ad mandata tua, quid ilexi Dominus nostrum tuum in universa terram. Jesus, remember me when you come into your kingdom. Jesus, remember me when you come into your kingdom. Jesus, remember me when you come into your kingdom. Jesus, remember me when you come into your kingdom. Jesus, remember me when you come into your kingdom. Jesus, remember me when you come into your kingdom. Gloria. Lines written after reading Gloria Pono's Return from the Dead. I hold within my hand a mighty thing that should not be, that has no right to be, that men would not have be, to which doth cling a powder of high sulphur none can see, but only thinly smell. For hell in rage is passing howling by, and I behold upon a page a cry that shall not age, as men's dim sound, so frenzied and so old. For here no aging comes, but ever young the morrow long that waits, and gates not seen reveal hind seals most huge the very song that doth but dawn upon dawns having been. For there is long cacophony where day was bright, and song most hugely wrong closed oft the night.